And just like that, it's all over.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
One of the worst seasons in Syracuse basketball history ends in a pretty fitting way. A blowout loss in the ACC Tournament. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse, and thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. This is a post-game reaction podcast. Syracuse basketball played a game which started Wednesday at around 9:30 p.m. Eastern. It is now well past midnight here on Thursday. But regardless, Syracuse played a game against SMU, round 2 of the ACC Tournament, and they lost in a blowout, 73-53. We're going to reflect about this entire season throughout this podcast. We're going to start the podcast talking more specifically about the game. But before we get to everything, I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below, your thoughts on this game, and of course, on Syracuse basketball's 2024-25 season. Before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert. Let's start talking about the game, because you know what? We're not going to be talking about individual basketball games in depth until next November. The season is over. It's done. It didn't necessarily look that way early, though. Syracuse playing SMU just about a week ago. The Orange nearly pulled off an upset against SMU on the road, but they blew a big lead in the second half, and they, of course, lost on an offensive rebound with a few seconds left. And to start this game, well, it was a good start for the Orange. They got 5 quick points. JJ Starling knocks down a three-pointer. How about that? JJ knocking down threes. And Eddie Lampkin hits a layup. It's 5-0 early. And with 3:38 left in the first half, SMU led Syracuse 25-22. But then the early warning signs of how this game was going to end started to creep in. Oquendo for SMU, he hits back-to-back three-pointers, and just like that, the Mustangs lead 31-22 with 1:52 left in the first half. And I'm thinking in this moment, this is a very critical stretch for Syracuse. They have to find a way to end the first half strong, and that's exactly what they did. They responded. Jyare Davis knocks down a three-pointer. Naheem McLeod blocks a shot. Then Jyare Davis knocks down another three-pointer, and Naheem McLeod blocks another shot. Syracuse can't score at the buzzer to end the first half, but when all is said and done at the end of the first 20 minutes of this game, SMU led Syracuse 31-28. It was a ball game for 20 minutes. And then the wheels just fell off. It just all crumbled for Syracuse in this one. Nothing went right in the second half. Syracuse, as a team, did not score a point in the second half until Jyare Davis made a layup with, get this, 14:25 remaining in the second half. They went over 5.5 minutes to start the next 20 minutes without scoring a single point. And not only that, okay, that's bad enough not being able to score. They could not get a single good look on offense up until that Jyare Davis layup. Not one shot where you would say, yeah, that's a good shot, and Syracuse just missed it. Because sometimes players are going to miss open shots, but basketball sometimes is more about the process in terms of how you run an offense and what shot quality you are getting, and ultimately executing when you get said shot in a good position. In this case, for 5.5 minutes, not only was Syracuse not scoring, they could not put themselves in a good position to even get a good opportunity to score. It was awful to start the second half, and it really was the entire second half. I mean, I kind of zoned out with about 3 minutes remaining because this game was over and I was prepping this post-game reaction podcast, but unless I missed anything drastic in the final few minutes, that was basically the entire half. Turnovers were also such a huge problem for Syracuse, as they have been all season long. 15 turnovers as a team for Syracuse. Now, they forced 15 on defense. So it didn't kill them in that regard, but so many missed opportunities. So many it was just terrible on offense, particularly in that second half. In the second half, they shot 8 of 30 from the field. I got to get my calculator out to find out that percentage. 8 for 30 is 26.6%. Goodness gracious, that was awful. Awful. As far as the stats, JJ Starling, he had 16 points. He was 6 of 17 from the field, 3 of 8 from the three-point line, but he started taking a bunch of threes when Syracuse was already well behind, so I get it. And he was also hurt for a bit in that second half. He did all he could in the 2 games in this ACC tournament, and I thought he did a pretty nice job, all things considered. Jyare Davis, he also did all he could in this one. He had 14 points. He was 6 of 11 from the field. I wish he can come back next year as a bench player, but he can't. He's out of eligibility. But I think he would be a solid role player for the Orange next year if he were allowed to come back. Eddie Lampkin, he struggled tonight. Just could not deal with SMU's length. That's really why Syracuse couldn't really get anything going on offense. SMU's length was just absolutely smothering in this one. It was, again, not good. But Eddie Lampkin, they just couldn't get it to him in the post. And even when they did, it ended up in a turnover sometimes. 5 points for Eddie. I'm looking at the stats right now. He did have 10 rebounds, but like I told you, he had 2 turnovers as well in this one. And everyone else really did not show up. It was not a good performance by Syracuse basketball. I was hoping that the Orange could build off nearly pulling an upset win against this very same team just a week ago. They couldn't. You want to call it running out of gas? Maybe they ran out of gas. I don't know. But the point being is that they simply were not good enough to beat SMU tonight. And as a result, their season is officially over. And trust me, we are going to reflect on Syracuse's season in just a moment. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse. The Orange lose in round 2 of the ACC Tournament to SMU, 73-53. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below, your thoughts on the game and the season in general. Coming up, we'll talk about the season overall. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching up with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today, an expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. The next 2 segments coming up, we are going to reflect on this season overall and talk a little bit about the future ahead. And don't worry, off-season talk is going to begin tomorrow, which technically is today. because I'm recording this on Thursday. So you'll see it Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. All the offseason talk is going to begin very shortly. All right. But for this season, Syracuse finished 14-19 overall, and they have officially clinched their worst season since 1969. Yeah, it's been a long time since Syracuse was this bad. I'm talking this bad. My number one thought when reflecting on this season overall is that it was just a disaster. Nothing went right for this team at all. There is no particular moment that stands out as an amazing moment. Just a very blah season. This was a nightmare. And I never thought I would ever see Syracuse be this bad. Ever. This is different than 2022. When in 2022, Syracuse goes under 500, but that team could occasionally punch above its weight. This team really couldn't. At all. It was bad from the start and bad in the end. And sure, towards the end, they were playing better basketball. They were, quote unquote, peaking at the right time. But they could not sustain it long enough in the ACC tournament. And after the Tennessee game, I was afraid that a season like this was coming. And I am sorry that I was proven right on that. I am very sorry. I wish I could have been more positive after that Tennessee game, but I call it like I see it. And by the way, I was hoping to be wrong. I was hoping to not be overreacting to the Tennessee loss. And that, hey, it was just a really good team and there's nothing that we can do about that. I apologize. I wish I was wrong, but I call it like I see it. And I thought in that moment that this season could turn out to be a disaster. And I think it's safe to say that it did. What an awful, awful year. Number 2, no NCAA tournament. Yeah, so Selection Sunday, we're going to watch it. Or maybe some of you all will watch it. We know one thing is for certain. Syracuse basketball will not hear its name called for an at-large selection on Sunday. Yeah, that's not cool, right? But it's just 1 year. 1 year of not making the tournament. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that's now 4 straight years of not making March Madness for a basketball school. I'm an alum, by the way. I graduated last May. I'm a fan of this team for life. I don't want to be negative about them, but this is 4 straight years of not making it. 2 of those years, they were under 500. One of those years, it was their worst season since 1969. I remember growing up when I was a little kid, filling out my bracket for the very first couple of times ever. And I would always see Syracuse in the field. Always. And as I got older, I learned more about college basketball. I learned more about Syracuse. Eventually would end up attending Syracuse. And still, up until 2021, even when the program was kind of on a decline, more often than not, Syracuse would be in the tournament field. Or at minimum, be on the bubble to make the tournament. You would see them. And in these last 4 years, you haven't even seen them on the bubble. For those that are watching and listening to this podcast, chances are you're older than me. You actually know what it's like when this team is good. And I hope we can get back there one day. but it's now 4 straight years that Syracuse basketball is going to be like the rest of us come next Thursday. Sitting on our butts on the couch watching the NCAA tournament. And it's a damn shame. The graduating class of 2025, I am sorry. You're not going to experience a Syracuse basketball tournament run. Not one. Furthermore, we're not really a football school, right? Well, maybe now with Fran Brown. Syracuse football, I went back, I looked through the seasons. Syracuse football has been ranked 11 times since the last time Syracuse basketball was ranked. For a basketball school. For a football program that died in the early 2000s. For a football program that had Dino Babers for 8 years. They have managed to stumble into a top 25 11 times since the last time that Syracuse basketball was ranked in the top 25, which for those of you that don't know, it was the week of December 10th, 2018. That is the last time Syracuse basketball was a ranked team nationally. It's a once proud program. And I hope that next year can be different, or the year after can be different. But when I reflect on this season, it's beyond just this year. This was maybe not the rock bottom in the sense that, well, they didn't miss the ACC tournament, but it has been the culmination of the decline the program has been in since the mid-2010s. And now it's here. This is the worst. And now it's time to see how Syracuse is going to respond, or if they're just going to continue to get worse. We'll find out, I guess, next November. Coming up, we'll reflect more here on Locked On Syracuse. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. I recently tried their Protein Plus meals, and they were packed with flavor and kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50off and use code LockedOnCollege50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege50off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. The Orange just lost to SMU in round 2 of the ACC Tournament, 73-53. Syracuse finishes the year 14-19 overall. And right now we are reflecting on Syracuse's season in general and the state of the program. And I would love to hear from you in the comments section below. So please feel free to chime in the conversation about Syracuse as a program right now. Change is definitely needed. There needs to be change. And tomorrow we're going to dive into who can come back, who can't come back due to eligibility, who's coming in. But the point being is that there needs to be significant change to this roster next season. We know that Adrian Autry will be back with Syracuse next year, or at least that's what the athletic director, John Wildhack, said on Q Sports Talk. he specifically went on record to say that Adrian Autry will be the head coach of Syracuse next year. So if anything changes, I will let you know, but just know that's not information that I'm simply making up. It's out there. He is going to be back, according to John Wildhack. So we need to look at the roster. We're not going to change the coach. That's that. We need to look at this roster very carefully and examine and say, who do we really want back? Who would we want back? I'd want Jyare Davis back. I'd want Eddie Lampkin to return. But they're out of eligibility, so they can't come back. I would want Donnie Freeman to return. I think we saw his floor this season, and I do think he has more room to grow. But I did like his baseline for where he's starting at, and I think he has so much where he can improve. He can become a better defender, a slightly better outside shooter, and that guy can be an all-ACC player. The problem with Donnie Freeman is not eligibility. Is he going to enter the pros? I know that there will be some of you who will comment in the comment section right now saying Donnie Freeman is no pro. Again, it's based on traits. Not necessarily where they're at in development, but their traits. Donnie Freeman is 6'9", and he's long. He might go pro, but we'll have to see. And who knows? Maybe he enters the portal. I don't know. But I would want Donnie Freeman to come back. I'd want JJ Starling back as a veteran leader, maybe in a more reduced role. I understand he averaged 18 points a game, but his efficiency was way down this season. If he could be the second or third scorer next year, I would happily take him back. I hope he doesn't put his name in the portal. I really don't. But the rest of the team, they fall into two categories, or one of these two categories as far as the roster and the players on it. A, it makes no difference to me whether or not they decide to stay or go. Or B, please go into the portal. We're going to have to get harsh here on this podcast. They're not going to change the coaches, so we're going to have to change the players. Some of you all may be asking about Elijah Chapa Moore. He falls into the category of makes no difference. Makes no difference to me whether he decides to stay or decides to enter the portal. I don't know what he's going to do, but I will say this. If JJ Starling decides to stay and you have Kyan Anthony coming in, combined with maybe even Luke Fennell coming in, perhaps a transfer portal addition, what is Elijah Chapa Moore's role going to be if he decides to return? I don't know. We'll have to sort it out this offseason. But change is definitely needed to this roster. Are brighter days ahead? That's the next one we're going to talk about here. Well, the only thing worse would have been missing the conference tournament. That's it. That's the only way you can really get worse. And next year, they have to be better, because if they're not better, everyone is fired. They're gone. That brings me to this. It's back to Adrian Autry. And John Wildhack declined to say publicly whether or not Adrian Autry has a tournament mandate or not next season. And for those that may not understand what I'm saying, it means John Wildhack, the athletic director, says to Adrian Autry, hey, man, if you don't make the NCAA tournament next year, you are fired. He has not gone out publicly and said that. In fact, he said on Q Sports Talk that the goal is to, quote, play meaningful games in March next year, or that's the expectation, play meaningful games in March. And that is such a ambiguous statement. That is a statement where it is completely up to your interpretation as far as what does meaningful games in March mean? They were playing meaningful games in March this season. The ACC tournament is meaningful. If you win 5 games in 5 days, you go to the NCAA tournament. So how long is the leash on Adrian Autry? If Syracuse wins 21 games next year, but they don't make the NCAA tournament, will he get year 4? Maybe optimistically, maybe Adrian Autry really is the guy. And Syracuse has a 180 turnaround here and they win 27 games in the regular season next year and they look like a juggernaut. And Adrian Autry is all of a sudden a genius. Who knows, right? We don't know. We know that Sadiq White is coming in. We know that Kyan Anthony is coming in, 2 high-profile freshmen. The point with everything that I'm saying is this. I will believe it when I see it. Are brighter days ahead? I'll believe it when I see it. It starts in the offseason. I want to see what they do in the transfer portal. Hopefully they get some elite transfer portal players. I do not care what school they are coming from. And then, when the season tips off in November of next year, I want to see this team win basketball games. And when they win basketball games, that is when I will start to believe that brighter days are ahead. Because the university right now is asking for blind faith. I'm not someone who just gives blind faith. I hope that brighter days are ahead, but I will believe it when I see it. Finally, I just want to thank you all for continuing to show up here on Locked On Syracuse after every single game this season. Win, lose, or draw. I get that for most of you all, this season was not enjoyable. They were not good this season. They weren't good at all. I can't sugarcoat it for you. But as bad as this season was, turning on my laptop, getting my lamp on, turning on the microphone was still enjoyable because you all are here. And we are a community. And I just want to say thank you to you all for all the support this entire season. I've been the host of Locked On Syracuse since late February of 2024. This team has not yet made the NCAA tournament while I was the host of Locked On Syracuse. But I cannot wait for the day that they actually do make that tournament and we can all talk about it together. I hope that next season around this time, sure, we'll be talking about the ACC tournament, but I hope the conversation is, what does Syracuse need to do to raise its NCAA tournament seed? How important is the conference tournament to March Madness? I hope we can do so many breakdowns on that. I would love if next year they won 25, 26 regular season games and they are just on a roll and it's like the good old days again. Thank you for an incredible year. But don't worry, I'm not going away. Unless you hate me, in which case, sorry, sticking around. Because even though basketball post-game recaps are finished, tomorrow, which is technically today, off-season talk will begin. And we'll do a full podcast going over everyone that is eligible to stay, everyone that is leaving because they have to leave, and the freshmen that are coming in. And we'll kind of do a little rundown on each individual player on this basketball team. And then on Friday, it'll be Pull Friday, grading the freshmen for Syracuse basketball in 2024-25. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On College Basketball Podcast with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. March is here, so be the most informed college basketball fan throughout the madness. You can find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse so this channel can grow and reach all Syracuse Orange fans. And I will see you all again soon.